and it was our new Secretary of State for Culture. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Peter Whittle.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for that great introduction, Steve. How great it is to be back in Margate. Just a few weeks ago, many of us were gathered here to give a spectacular start to Nigel's campaign in Thanet. There was a feeling then that history was in the making. And it is we who are making that history. It is we in UKIP who are carrying on the great traditions of reformers, of grassroots organisations, of those who have simply refused to accept what they are told is best for them, which have characterised our history of our country. It is we who are delivering a torpedo to a political establishment that is rotten to the core. It is we who are the new thinkers. It is we who are not afraid to discuss those issues which mean so much to ordinary people, but on which the old parties have closed down debate for so long. And it is we who are the party of the future, a party which believes that our country has a brilliant time ahead if we can cast off the shackles of the past, of decades of destructive and negative thinking. It is we who believe in Britain. Part of that destructive thinking was the belief that people who came to live here need not be encouraged to integrate. This policy, the policy of multiculturalism, actively encouraged people to remain separate, to identify themselves first and foremost, not as British citizens, but as members of a particular cultural, religious, or ethnic group. We have seen where this has led us. It is no wonder that even some voices in the old parties have raised concerns about the failure of this approach, yet they do nothing. This is because at heart, they do not believe in Britain. They are indifferent to our values, or indeed fearful of speaking up for them. They are often embarrassed by our history and disdainful of our patriotism. Now, with such an establishment attitude, how can one expect people coming here to know how to integrate? Indeed, on my travels around the country, I've lost count of the number of times first and second generation immigrants have raised the question to me, why doesn't Britain stand up for its values? Well, ladies and gentlemen, we in UKIP do stand up for our values, and we do want people to integrate. You know, contrary to what we are so often told and continue to be told, Britain has always been a welcoming society to people of whatever faith, nationality, or creed who have wanted to make this country their home. We respect people's faiths and beliefs. There should be no doubt about this. But we believe that those faiths and beliefs must exist firmly within a British framework. We must defend and be proud of our Judeo-Christian heritage. But to build a more integrated society, we must at first have a fair and reasonable immigration policy. Mass, uncontrolled immigration of the kind that Britain has seen over the past 2 decades and continues to witness is actually the enemy of integration. Integration becomes a practical impossibility, and indeed for those arriving here, no longer even a necessity. That is why the reasonable, ethical, and fair immigration policy being produced by Stephen Wolfe is a crucial component in setting our country on a new road. A road to greater unity, a road away from the fragmentation and separation of the past. You know, for immigration is not just about numbers. It is not just about economics. A country is more than just its economy. It is not simply a marketplace. As we prepare to celebrate the 800th anniversary of the Magna Carta this year, a crucial moment in our country's history, it is vital that we remember this. Our freedoms and rights have been hard won over many centuries. They go to the very heart of what we are. But our political establishment runs scared of proclaiming the greatness of our traditions and our values. They do this at the very time when it is needed more than ever, a time when we need to strive to come together, a time when we have to put markers down and say, this is what we are and this is what we believe in. We believe firmly in the rule of law and that there should be one law for all, and that law is British law. A society that can pick and choose a legal system gradually ceases to be a society at all. No parallel system should ever be allowed to impinge on the integrity of British law. There must be no tolerance of systems which deny the equal rights of men and women. When I last spoke at conference, the Law Society had issued special guidelines for the drawing up of wills under Sharia law, under which women would be treated differently to men. But after much protest by dedicated campaigners, it retracted those guidelines and indeed apologized. This is to be hugely welcomed. It was indeed one of those markers I mentioned, but it also shows how vigilant we must be. Similarly, we must say that there should be zero tolerance of those practices and customs which run counter to our belief in equality and the dignity of all human beings. Forced marriage, honor killings, the appalling practice of female genital mutilation, these must have no place in our society. Despite being explicitly against British law, there has been no successful prosecution for FGM. And this at a time when the number of women and girls at risk of FGM has hugely increased. Multiculturalism and a misplaced cultural sensitivity has allowed such practices to be tolerated for far too long. The rights of women, for these are the most affected by such practices, should and must extend to all parts of our society, regardless of religion or ethnicity. There must be one law for all. This, ladies and gentlemen, is real inclusiveness and is what we strive for. So too are we bound by our fundamental belief in freedom of speech. It might seem extraordinary that we have to reaffirm this today in 2015, but reaffirm it we must. It is the foundation on which our democracy itself is based. It is something which we in Britain have taken for granted, but I would say now that we cannot afford to be so complacent. Last month, we witnessed a murderous attack on the offices of Charlie Hebdo magazine in Paris. And only weeks ago, a meeting about freedom of speech in Copenhagen again ended in violence and death. It was inspiring to me to see both the French people and their politicians come out in such force in defense of their values and freedoms. But in Britain in recent weeks, we've seen a number of things which prove that we cannot trust our own rulers to defend and protect our precious value of freedom of speech. In central London, a protest took place against Charlie Hebdo and its cartoons of Mohammed. The demonstrators then handed into Downing Street a petition containing over 100,000 signatures supporting these demands. We then learned that a number of police forces in our country attempted to collect the names of people who had bought copies of the magazine. One of the forces in Wiltshire described this as being in the interests of, quote, community cohesion. And then we heard Lord Wolfe, the former Lord Chief Justice, no less, say that cartoonists should, quote, show restraint so as not to offend Islamic sensibilities. Well, at no point during this time did our political leaders take the opportunity to state loud and clear that freedom of speech is a fundamental British value and that no one group should receive special treatment. At no time did any of them make it clear that there is no law which prohibits the giving of perceived offence, or that the taking of it is a justification for curtailing an ancient freedom. No wonder that the public rightly looks on in bewilderment and growing frustration at the lack of nerve, the cynicism, and the sheer indifference displayed by our political class. Sometimes it appears that we have moved nowhere since the demonstrations against Salman Rushdie and the Satanic Verses over 25 years ago. But as I said earlier, we in UKIP understand that our freedoms were hard won. We believe that the law must apply to everyone equally and that the values on which those laws are based are upheld completely and fearlessly. We cannot expect unity if special rules are seen to apply to one group over another. So our media, our writers, our artists, all of these who see themselves as on the front line of free speech must not give in to self-censorship. Freedom of speech within the law either exists or it does not. There can be no compromise on this. Ladies and gentlemen, we in UKIP have become used to the smears and the lies. We've become used to being characterized as the people who want to resurrect the 1950s. And we know that nothing could be further from the truth. When we meet, and when we talk and discuss, one theme always emerges: our belief in our country and our belief in its future. Unlike the bankrupt status quo, we have a vision for that future. It is of a country of people who see themselves as British citizens regardless of faith or ethnicity. It is a country of citizens treated equally under one law. A country willing to defend freedom of speech. A country that knows that these are British values and that they are the best in the world. Thank you.